The lush blue-green orb of New Terra hung serene against the blackness of space, its swirling white clouds masking the bustling cities below. 5 million colonists called this world home, farmers in the equatorial breadbaskets, miners in the northern ranges, engineers maintaining the orbital docks where trade ships from a dozen species came and went. The twin moons cast silver light across the western hemisphere as night fell over the capital. Then the sky burned. Alarms shrieked across New Terra's defense grid as the first sickle-shaped warships emerged from warp. The Zephyrian Dominion fleet filled every scanner, their plasma cannons already glowing crimson with charging sequences. Governor Maria Chen barely had time to reach the emergency bunker beneath her office before the first orbital strikes hit. All civilian channels, evacuation orders now. She barked at her staff, her fingers flying across holographic controls. The planetary shield flickered online, its golden dome stretching across the capital. It lasted 8 seconds before the concentrated fire of 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts shattered it like glass. In orbit, Admiral Krazak watched the destruction unfold from the bridge of the Dominion's flagship, Claw of Supremacy. His 4 eyes reflected the blossoming firestorms below as plasma rained down. Magnificent, he hissed, his scaled fingers tightening around the command throne's armrests. Begging the glassing protocol. On the surface, Ryan Blake sprinted through collapsing streets, his marine armor's cooling systems whining under the heat of nearby plasma impacts. The lieutenant colonel had been on leave when the attack began, visiting his sister's family in New Terra's coastal city. Now he dragged his 9-year-old nephew through the chaos, the boy's face streaked with soot and tears. "Where's Mom?" the kid screamed over the roar of collapsing buildings. Blake didn't answer. Had seen the apartment complex take a direct hit. Instead, he shoved the boy into an emergency shelter hatch, its reinforced door already glowing red, hot from atmospheric heating. "Stay here until..." The world flashed white. Blake woke minutes later, his armor's medical suite injecting stimulants directly into his carotid. The coastal city was gone. Where skyscrapers had stood, only smooth glass plains remained, still bubbling from the heat. His nephew's shelter had been at ground zero. His comm crackled, the last transmission from New Terra's orbital defense platform before it died. Wezen Retribution responding to distress calls. ETA 17 minutes. All surviving military personnel rally at static, swallowed the rest. Blake staggered to his feet. His HUD showed 17% of the planetary shield still active over the southern hemisphere. 17% of 5 million people. He started running. Above him, Krazak watched the final bombardment sequence complete. New Terra's once vibrant surface now shimmered like a dark mirror under the system's sun. "Pathetic," the Admiral muttered to his tactical officer. "They barely fought back." The bridge crew chuckled, their mandibles clicking in amusement. One junior officer hesitated. "Admiral, their fleet." Krazak waved a dismissive claw. "The Terrans have no fleet, scattered patrol ships at best." He leaned back as the Claw of Supremacy turned toward the system's edge, broadcast this victory across all channels. "Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Dominion." Deep in the blackness between stars, the USN Retribution received the Zephyrian transmission. Captain Ryan Blake, no relation to the Marine now buried under New Terra's ruins, watched the glassing footage with his bridge crew in silence. The only sound was the creak of his first officers, gloves tightening around a railgun control panel. "Signal Earth Command," Blake finally said, his voice colder than the void outside. "Authorization code Omega, Feifei, Exterminators." Across the Terran fleet, ships that had been running dark for months powered their drives. The Zephyrians thought they'd broken humanity. They were wrong. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with energy, its crystalline walls refracting light into prismatic patterns across the assembled delegates. Lisa Hayes sat perfectly still in the human delegation's seat, her hands folded on the polished obsidian table. Around her, representatives from a dozen species murmured in their native tongues, their translator implants converting the noise into a low buzz of common speech. Order called High Arbiter Vexis, their 4 arms raised for silence. The Melorite's translucent skin pulsed with irritation. We convened to discuss the Zephyrian action against the Terran colony and its consequences. A Vorak diplomat leaned forward, his chitinous plates clicking with amusement. What consequences? The humans haven't even protested. His compound eyes glittered as he turned to Lisa. Your people have gone quiet, like prey animals hiding after a predator's strike. Lisa kept her breathing even. She counted the veins in the Vorak's wing membranes, 37 on the left, 39 on the right, anything to keep her hands from shaking. Silence implies consent, said the Zephyrian representative. Admiral Krazak's hologram flickering above their delegation pod. New Terra was a legitimate military target. Their so-called navy failed to defend it. The matter is settled. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Solarian delegate floated higher in their anti-grav harness. This council has not voted on. What is there to vote on? Interrupted the Vorak. He gestured to the empty space where human fleet markers should have appeared on the strategic display. Look at them. No counterattack. No mobilization. They've accepted their place. Lisa felt the weight of the data chip in her pocket. The last transmission from Earth Command had been clear. Maintain position. Do not react. She'd watched New Terra burn from the Council observation deck, her nails drawing blood from her palms. The Melorite arbiter turned to her. Ambassador Hayes, does Earth wish to address the Council? She stood slowly, aware of every alien eye upon her. The chamber's acoustics carried her voice effortlessly. The United Earth Stellar Navy has recalled all the patrols. Our merchant fleets have been grounded. Per the Terran Mutual Defense Pact, we have activated Article 7. The Vorak laughed, a wet, chittering sound. Article 7? What is that? Some human surrender document? Lisa smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Article 7 is our oldest military doctrine. Translated roughly, when attacked by a superior force, disappear. Krazak's hologram sneered. Cowardice dressed up as strategy. A new voice cut through the chamber, interesting. All turned to see Elder Sithis uncoiling from the reptilian Shith delegation. His forked tongue tasted the air. The humans I fought alongside at the Battle of Cygnus V didn't run. They held the line against the Devourer swarm when others fled. The Vorak waved a clawed hand. Ancient history, modern humans are soft. Look at them. No natural armor, no venom, barely any night vision, evolution's afterthought. Lisa watched the tactical display update. Still no human ships, just the blinking markers of Zephyrian victory celebrations near New Terra's ashes. She wondered if Ryan Blake was watching this feed somewhere in the dark between stars. Inner speculation, said High Arbiter Vexis. We will table the matter of... Wait. The Solarian delegate pulsed with sudden bioluminescence. Something's happening at the edge of sensor range. All eyes turned to the display. A cluster of unidentified contacts flickered near the ruins of New Terra's orbital defenses. For a breathless moment, the chamber held still. Then the contacts vanished. Ghost echoes, scoffed the Vorak. Probably a sensor malfunction from all that plasma discharge. Lisa sat back down, smoothing her jacket. She knew what railgun recoil looked like on long-range scanners, knew how US and Black Ops ships could slip past detection. Most of all, she knew the significance of those coordinates, the exact position where the Zephyrian bombardment fleet had parked to gloat over their handiwork. The display updated again. 3 Zephyrian supply ships had failed to report in on schedule. Routine delay, according to their automated status ping. Lisa counted to 10 in her head. By the time she reached 7, another alert popped up. A Zephyrian scout frigate had just found wreckage drifting near New Terra's 4th moon. No distress signals, no escape pods, just torn metal and frozen oxygen clouds. Probably pirates, muttered the Zephyrian aide, but his crest feathers lay flat against his skull. The Vorak diplomat leaned toward Lisa, his breath smelling of decaying meat. Still think your Article 7 scares anyone? Lisa met his gaze. You misunderstand. Article 7 isn't about fear, it is about hunting terms. She tapped the display where the wreckage icon pulsed. Tell me, Ambassador, how many Zephyrian ships have gone missing in the past 24 hours? The chamber fell silent. The display updated again, another ship marked overdue. Then another. High Arbiter Vexus's skin darkened with alarm. This council demands an explanation. Lisa stood, cutting them off. You glassed a human world. Her voice carried through the chamber like a knife sliding from its sheath. Now you reap the storm. As she walked out, the first distress call finally came through. A Zephyrian dreadnought reporting contact with an unidentified vessel. The transmission cut off mid-sentence. The last word had been retribution. The nebula churned like a living thing, its violet tendrils swallowing all light and sensor echoes. The USN Retribution drifted within its embrace, her blackened hull still radiating heat from the jump. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the command deck, his reflection a ghost in the darkened view screen. The crew worked in silence, their faces lit only by the glow of tactical displays. Status, Blake said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Chen adjusted her headset. All systems dark. Zephyrian convoy approaching the nebula's edge. 3 freighters, 2 escorts, standard Dominion formation. Blake's fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. The convoy was fat, slow, perfect. The first cut in a war they didn't know had already begun. Helm, bring us about, silent running. The Retribution pivoted, her thrusters firing in short, controlled bursts to avoid detection. The nebula's interference masked their movements, but one wrong pulse, one stray emission, and the Dominion would know they weren't alone. Captain, whispered Commander Hale from the weapons station. Railguns charged. Torpedo bays ready. Blake exhaled. Wait for my mark. On the main screen, the convoy lumbered into view. The escorts, sickle-shaped Dominion, class frigates, flanked the freighters, their sensor arrays sweeping lazily through the void. They weren't expecting trouble. Why would they? The Terrans were broken. Their fleets scattered. Distance, 5,000 clicks and closing, Chen reported. Blake leaned forward. All hands, battle stations. A soft chime echoed through the ship as the crew braced. The Retribution's systems hummed to life, still muted, still hidden. 3,000. Blake's jaw clenched. New Terror's screams echoed in his skull. The cities melting, the skies burning. 2,000. Captain Hale murmured. They're painting us with passive scans. Blake didn't flinch. Let them look. The lead escort sensors flickered over the nebula, pausing, just for a second, on the Retribution's position. 1,000, fire. The railguns roared. Tungsten slugs tore through the void. Silent and deadly, the lead escort shattered, its hull splitting like rotten fruit. The second escort barely had time to react before the Retribution's torpedoes slammed into its engines, detonating in a bloom of white-hot plasma. The freighters panicked. Their thrusters flared as they tried to flee, but it was too late. All batteries, target the freighters, Blake ordered. Leave nothing. The Retribution's guns spoke again. One freighter exploded, its cargo of munitions igniting in a chain reaction. The second veered wildly, its engines crippled by precision fire. The third tried to jump, its warp drive spooling up in desperation. But a final railgun shot punched through its core, silencing it forever. The silence that followed was absolute. Scan the wreckage, Blake said. Chen's fingers danced across her console. No life signs, no distress beacons. They never even got a signal out. Blake stood, his boots clicking against the deck as he approached the view screen. The debris field glittered in the nebula's glow, a graveyard of Zephyrian arrogance. Captain, Hale said quietly, we just declared war. Blake's smile was thin cold. No, they did that when they glassed New Terra. He turned to the comms officer. Patch me through to the fleet. The channel opened with a soft chime across the void, hidden in the dark between stars. 100 Terran ships listened. "For New Terra," Blake said. The response came instantly, a chorus of voices from the black. "For New Terra." The Retribution's engines flared as she turned, vanishing back into the nebula's embrace. Behind her, the wreckage drifted, a message written in fire and silence. The Terrans weren't hiding. They were hunting. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with energy, its crystalline walls refracting light into prismatic patterns across the assembled delegates. The air smelled of ozone and alien pheromones, a cloying mix that made Ambassador Lisa Hayes nose itch. She kept her hands folded on the obsidian table, her expression unreadable as the holographic displays flickered above them. "Another Zephyrian supply depot gone dark," announced Councillor Vexis, their translucent skin pulsing with irritation. The hologram zoomed in on the wreckage, twisted metal floating in the void. No escape pods, no life signs. "This makes 12 in as many cycles." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Vorak delegate, Warlord Grathak, leaned forward, his armored exoskeleton scraping against the table. "Pirates," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "The fringe systems have always been lawless." Lisa kept her breathing steady. She could feel the weight of their gazes, the unspoken accusation. They knew, they just refused to believe. "Pirates don't leave no survivors," countered the Ceralian ambassador, their floating orbs darting nervously. "Pirates take prisoners, take loot. This is clean," Grathak snorted, a sound like a steam vent. "And you think the humans did this?" His mandibles spread in a mocking grin. "Their fleet is dust, their colonies burn. What could they possibly? They glassed a human world." Lisa's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. The room fell silent. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. New Terra, 5 billion souls. Children, elderly. You watched it burn and called it justice. Vexis tendrils twitched. The Zephyrian Dominion acted within their rights. New Terra was a disputed colony. Lisa smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Disputed, funny word for ours. She tapped a command into her wrist console. The holograms shifted, showing a new set of coordinates, deep space, far from any trade routes. "But you're right, the USN Retribution, the rest of our fleet. They're not hiding in the fringe." The image zoomed in, a nebula swirling with dust and radiation, and there, barely visible, the angular silhouette of a Terran battleship. "They're waiting." Grathak's laughter boomed across the chamber. "One ship. You expect us to tremble?" "Not one." Lisa tapped another command. The nebulous dust cleared. Just for a moment. Just enough to reveal the shadows within. Dozens of them. Hundreds, hulls blackened. Weapons humming with stolen Zephyrian tech. "You glassed a human world," she repeated softly. "Now you reap the storm." The Ceralian's orbs dimmed with dread. "You can't be serious. The Dominion fleet outnumbers yours 10 to 1. Lisa leaned back, her smile never wavering. "Funny thing about humans, we don't fight fair." She nodded to the hologram. "Ask Admiral Krazak how his supply lines are holding up." "Oh wait, you can't." His last transmission was, how did he put it? She tapped a final command. Krazak's snarling face filled the display, frozen mid-sentence, weak species. The feed cut to static. The chamber erupted. Vexis tendrils lashed like whips. "This is an act of war," Lisa stood, smoothing her jacket. "No," she corrected. "War has rules. This is extermination." She turned to leave, pausing only at the door. "Sleep well, counselors, if you can." Outside, in the privacy of her shuttle, Lisa finally let her hands shake. The console beeped, an encrypted channel. She opened it. They took the bait. Blake's voice crackled through. The Retribution's bridge hummed behind him, the sound of engines at full burn. Grathak still laughing. Lisa admitted, thinks we're bluffing. Blake's grin was audible. Let him. The sleeper ships just woke up. Nemesis and Vengeance are in position. A pause. Static. Then softer. "You sure about this? Hayes, once we start. Therese, no going back." Lisa stared at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, New Terra's ashes still drifted. They didn't leave us a choice. She closed the channel. The shuttle's engines flared to life, carrying her away from the council's glittering spire. Behind her, unnoticed, 100 new signals flickered to life in the dark, silent, hungry. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The void between stars had never felt so alive. Deep in the uncharted reaches of the Kasari expanse, space rippled, not with the graceful distortion of a warp drive, but with something darker, something hungry. The first ship emerged like a blade from the black. The USN Vengeance, its hull pitted with battle scars, slid into real space without fanfare. No energy signatures, no comms chatter, just silence and cold steel. Then another and another. The Nemesis, the Iron Will, the Pale Horse. Dozens more. A fleet born in shadow, forged in fury. Their hulls bore no insignias, no proud Terran colors, just the matte black of stealth plating, and the occasional streak of dried Superior blood. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display fill with green dots. Each one represented a ship that had spent months hiding, waiting, sharpening its teeth. "Status?" Blake asked, his voice rough from months of silent running. Lieutenant Chen didn't look up from her console. "All ships reporting in, sir. Railguns charged. Plasma lances hot." The Vengeance picked up some modifications from that last Dominion depot. Blake's lips twitched. "Let me guess, Commander Vance got creative again. Tore the plasma cannons off a Superior cruiser and bolted them to our dorsal mounts." Chen finally glanced up, her grin feral. "Sends his regards." A chime sounded from the comm station. Ensign Kova, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused, stiffened. "Sir, we're receiving a priority burst transmission, encrypted with old Earth codes." Blake straightened. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the gaunt face of Admiral Graves. The old man's uniform hung loose now, his eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. But the fire in them hadn't dimmed. "Blake," Graves rasped. "The council's in session right now. They're still laughing about New Terra." A muscle in Blake's jaw twitched. Graves leaned closer. "You remember your orders?" Blake didn't blink. "Burn their pride, shatter their fleets, leave them nothing but ash and regret." "Good." Graves' image flickered as the transmission degraded. "Because the Dominion just scrambled their home defense fleet. They finally noticed their missing ships." Chen snorted. "Took them long enough." Blake turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge was turned toward him, eyes bright with something the galaxy had forgotten humans could feel. Not fear, not despair. Vengeance. "Open a fleet-wide channel," Blake ordered. Kova's fingers flew across his panel. "Live in 3-2. Blake didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "All ships, this is Captain Blake of the USN Retribution." He let the silence stretch for a heartbeat. "You've waited in the dark. You've starved. You've bled. Now look at your screens. Every display across the fleet, lit up with the same image. Zapper Prime, its sprawling orbital platforms, glittering like jewels around the emerald homeworld." Blake's voice turned to iron. "That is not a target. That is a message." He tapped his console. The image zoomed in, focusing on the massive orbital shipyards where the Dominion's pride, the Dreadnought-class supercarriers, docked for maintenance. Vengeance formation, full-burn weapons free. Blake bared his teeth. "Let's teach the galaxy why you never glass a human world." The Retribution's engines roared to life across the fleet. 100 more followed suit. No stealth now, no hiding, just the thunder of human wrath rolling across the stars. Aboard the Vengeance, Commander Vance watched his tactical screen light up with incoming Dominion fighters. He cracked his knuckles and reached for the manual override on his stolen plasma cannons. "All right, you overgrown bugs," he muttered. "Let's see how you like being on the receiving end." The first railgun salvo tore through a Dominion frigate like paper. Zapier Prime's defense grid lit up in panic. Humanity had arrived. The skies of Zapier Prime burned. Plasma lances from the USN Vengeance carved through the upper atmosphere, turning the once proud spires of the Dominion capital into rivers of molten metal. Below, the streets ran with fire as the planetary shields collapsed under the relentless bombardment. Admiral Krazak's flagship, the Dominion's pride, shuddered as another volley of human railgun fire slammed into its flank. The bridge crew scrambled, their exoskeletons flashing panic red. Return fire, Krazak roared, his mandibles clicking furiously. Where are our reinforcements? A junior officer trembled, his antennae drooping. Gone, Admiral. The human fleet. They hit the orbital docks first. Nothing left to launch. Krazak's claws dug into the command console. This wasn't warfare. This was annihilation. Outside the viewports, the blackened hulls of Terran warships moved like ghosts through the chaos. No formation, no hesitation, just methodical, brutal efficiency. The USN Nemesis drifted past, its railgun batteries cycling again. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cracked. Boarding pods. There, the hull shuddered violently. Alarms wailed as the sound of metal tearing echoed through the corridors. Then came the gunfire. Krazak drew his plasma pistol, his carapace hardening in defiance. Secure the bridge. No human sets foot. The blast doors exploded inward. Smoke curled around the armored figures stepping through. Their helmets were sealed, visors dark. No insignia, no identification, just black armor and the glint of vibro blades. The Dominion guards raised their weapons and died before they could fire. A single shot from the lead human's rifle punched through 3 of them. The others moved like shadows, blades flashing. Krazak's crew fell without a sound. Then the humans stopped. One of them stepped forward, removing his helmet. Captain Ryan Blake's face was streaked with soot, his eyes cold. Admiral, his voice was quiet, almost polite. Krazak hissed, raising his pistol. You dare board my ship? You think this changes anything? Blake didn't flinch. It changes everything. Behind him, another human, a woman with a scar across her cheek, tossed a data pad onto the deck. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the burning surface of Zapier Prime. You're home, Blake said. Or what's left of it. Krazak's claws twitched. You glassed our world. No, Blake tilted his head. We're giving it back to you. The woman tapped her wrist, the hologram zoomed in on the Dominion's own bombardment records. New Terra, the melting cities, the screams. Blake's voice dropped to a whisper. Recognize it. Krazak's exoskeleton paled. The humans didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. Then Blake drew his knife. Krazak lunged, firing wildly. The shot grazed Blake's shoulder, but the human didn't stagger, didn't even blink. His hand snapped out, catching Krazak's wrist. A twist, a crunch. The pistol clattered to the deck. Blake drove the knife into Krazak's thorax. The Admiral gasped, ichor bubbling from his mandibles. Blake leaned close. We don't conquer. His breath was hot against Krazak's antennae. We erase. He twisted the blade outside. The last of Zapier Prime's defenses crumbled. The USN Retribution hung in low orbit, its railguns silent, its work done. On the bridge, Blake wiped his knife clean. His comm crackled. Captain, Lisa Hayes' voice was calm. The Council is watching. Blake glanced at the burning world below. Good. He turned to his squad. Move out. We're not done yet. The humans vanished as quickly as they'd come, leaving only the dead, and the echo of Blake's final words hanging in the air. The galaxy would hear them soon enough. The chamber of the Galactic Council had never known such silence. The crystalline walls, usually alive with the hum of 100 species debating, now reflected only stunned faces. Holograms flickered above the central dais, showing the last images transmitted from Zapier Prime, before the feeds cut to static. Skies burning, cities collapsing into molten craters. Dominion warships breaking apart in orbit like shattered toys. Lisa Hayes stood at humanity's designated podium, her hands clasped behind her back. The Vorak diplomat who had laughed at her weeks before now clutched the edge of his seat, his crest flattened in fear. The telepathic Cerellians had stopped broadcasting their thoughts entirely, their floating orbs darting between the holograms and Hayes' impassive face. Grathak, the Vorak warlord, was the first to break the silence. This is impossible, he snarled, though his voice lacked its usual bluster. The Dominion fleet outnumbered yours 10-1. Hayes didn't blink. And yet, she said softly, their homeworld is glass. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian delegation, what remained of it, had not arrived. Their seats stood empty. High Counselor Vexis of the Ilithari, a species that had ruled the galaxy's politics for centuries, rose on trembling tendrils. Ambassador Hayes, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. The Council, we did not anticipate. You didn't ask. Hayes cut in. Her voice was calm, but the words carried like a blade. You assumed. Like the Dominion assumed when they burned New Terra, like the Vorak assumed when they called us weak. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every species in the room. You glassed a human world, and we answered. A hologram flickered to life beside her. An updated star map, red markers pulsed where Dominion colonies had been. Now, they were black, wiped clean. Grathak's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. You're monsters, he spat. Hayes smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. No, we're patient. The chamber doors hissed open. Every head turned as Admiral Krazak of the Dominion staggered in, his once pristine uniform torn, his carapace scorched. He collapsed to his knees before the council. They left me alive, he rasped. Blake, he said to deliver a message. Vexis leaned forward. What message? Krazak's mandibles trembled. The next species to raise a hand against humanity will share our fate. Silence. Then, from the back of the chamber, a single voice. A young Scythian scholar who had once mocked human fragility, whispered, Gods protect us. Hayes turned back to the council. There are no gods here, she said. Only consequences. She tapped a command into her wrist console. The holograms shifted again, this time showing the blackened hulls of the USN fleet vanishing into slipspace one by one. The Terrans aren't done, and neither am I. Grathak surged to his feet. You can't just sit down, Hayes snapped. The force in her voice made even the Cerellians flinch. You wanted to debate humanity's place in the galaxy. Here is your answer. She gestured to the holograms of burning worlds. This is our diplomacy now. Vexis tendrils coiled tight. What do you want? Hayes tilted her head. Nothing. That's the lesson you all failed to learn. We didn't want your territory, your resources, your pity. She stepped away from the podium. But if you ever threaten us again, remember Zephyr Prime, remember New Terra, and ask yourself, how many more fleets are waiting in the dark? She turned and walked toward the exit. No one stopped her. Behind her, the holograms flickered one last time. A final transmission from the USN Retribution received moments before it vanished. Blake's face filled the screen, his eyes cold. The Terrans weren't broken, he said. They were waiting. Then static and silence.